One of the most enticing aspects of gaming is the sheer amount of freedom and choice that is given to the player. While the level of autonomy varies depending on the genre or title, one thing remains consistent across the industry. Players are given a set of rules and parameters in which they must work to solve a situation or complete a challenge. This is ultimately what makes the vast majority of single-player video games so enjoyable. Testing our skills and intellect against the challenges imposed by game developers can be a satisfying experience, and doing so in our own unique and creative ways makes it even more rewarding. It's clear that the developers at Yellow Brick Games had this in mind when creating Eternal Strands. The game has you navigate a long-abandoned wilderness and defeat towering creatures with an abundance of traversal and combat options. Unfortunately, the sheer volume of capabilities fails to be captivating in and of itself because of repetitive gameplay, uninteresting enemies, and clunky mechanics. As a result, my 35-hour playthrough of Eternal Strands turned out to be a real drag.
Is she really ready to fight that thing?
Eternal Strands places you in the role of Bryn, a woman blessed with the inherent ability to wield magic. Born into a world where people like her, known as Weavers, have been cast out by society and forced into a nomadic existence, she and her band of Weavers set out to explore a lost civilization where magic and Weavers once thrived. Upon arrival, you embark on numerous missions to uncover the mystery behind the civilization's abrupt collapse and what it means for the future of the world. At face value, the core gameplay of Eternal Strands might seem quite enticing. You'll set out on expeditions exploring and returning to a handful of small isolated locations, gathering resources to improve your gear and base camp while also completing objectives to progress the story. Along the way, you'll encounter harsh climates, hostile creatures, and the game's standout feature, towering bosses, all of which can be tackled in different ways thanks to Bryn's ability to manipulate the elements. However, what starts as a thrilling exploration of a dangerous and ancient civilization soon turns into a monotonous cycle of fetch quests that has you backtrack through already explored areas, smashing boxes, and fighting uninteresting enemies. We'll begin with what in my opinion is the worst part of Eternal Strands, the combat. To clarify, I'm specifically talking about combat against regular run-of-the-mill enemies. The boss fights are a whole different story that we'll discuss later on. As for the standard enemies, there's really no other way to describe them except annoying. They rarely pose much of a threat, and their lack of variety and simplistic attack patterns make them uninteresting. Rather than engaging encounters, they simply pester you with simple attacks until they are defeated. Pair that with some clunky and slow combat mechanics and you've got yourself some enemies you'll likely want to eliminate in the most efficient way possible. Due to the differing enemy types, there are moments where you'll find cool and unique ways to deal with these threats, especially later on in the game. But in nearly all situations, your best option is to pick up an enemy with telekinesis, slam them into the ground, and hack away while they're stunned. The boss fights, however, are a different story and are probably the most innovative thing Eternal Strands has to offer. Throughout your journey, you'll encounter numerous towering creatures hell-bent on destroying you. To defeat them, you'll have to use most of the tools at your disposal to expose weak points, evade attacks, and gradually wear them down until they finally come crashing to Earth. Each boss can be defeated in two ways, by simply depleting its health bar through direct attacks or exposing its strand, which can be harvested for an instant kill. Extracting a strand involves solving a small puzzle specific to that creature, often requiring you to climb its body and damage certain parts. Both methods have their trade-offs, but either approach usually results in tense, dynamic encounters where creativity is rewarded. The unfortunate thing is that even those highlights get overshadowed by repetition. Once defeated, each boss provides the highest tier of crafting materials and a strand that can upgrade your magical abilities. These upgrades are crucial to your success, meaning you'll end up repeating the same boss encounters multiple times. Additionally, each time you return to an already explored area, a randomly selected boss you've already defeated will spawn and patrol a large section of the map. This means you'll likely have to take it down again just to progress, leading to an overabundance of repetitive fights that quickly turn into a chore. Eternal Strands also places a heavy focus on exploration. Since the entire plot revolves around uncovering the secrets of a lost civilization, you'll traverse various landscapes filled with different resources and enemies. At times, exploration can be enjoyable due to the destructible environment, the ability to climb anything, and Bryn's diverse abilities that allow for creative navigation. The world is also filled with collectibles like codex entries, schematics for new gear, and resources for your camp, making every nook and cranny feel worth checking out. With dynamic weather patterns like flash freezes, the environment itself presents challenges that force you to adapt and use different tools to survive. The way the world reacts to your actions is quite impressive. Walking past a scorched battlefield after a fire-based encounter reinforces a strong sense of immersion. However, even this aspect of the game quickly falls into the trap of repetition. Outside of the occasional weather shift, which is less frequent than you might think and often avoidable, areas remain largely unchanged. Enemy spawns are static, leaving little room for unexpected encounters. Quests, both primary and secondary, frequently send you back to the same locations, further contributing to the repetitive sense of familiarity. More than once, I was sent on a mission to find old documents only to discover they were sitting on a table I'd walked past a dozen times before. In one instance, I was sent back to the exact same room twice to retrieve documents where the missing paperwork was just a few feet apart from one another. Even the first side quest I completed had me gathering flowers for a potion, only for the next quest to send me back to collect the exact same flowers.
So, when can I go test? I was hoping you'd ask. I need some more ingredients. More of the luminous plants, for one. And some ink-cap mushrooms, if you wouldn't mind.
Adding to the frustration, while you can climb nearly anything, there's no smooth way to descend aside from simply jumping. And despite the emphasis on climbing, for whatever reason the only thing I couldn't climb was a ladder. Fortunately, while I repeatedly traversed the same areas and fought the same enemies, I did find solace in the crafting system. During your adventures, you'll obtain materials from chests, breaking objects, and defeating monsters, all of which can be used for upgrades or crafting new equipment at your home base. The system is simple yet effective, allowing full control over stat allocation and even the appearance of your gear. It strikes a nice balance, streamlined enough to avoid unnecessary complexity but detailed enough to let you optimize for specific situations. The variety of resources and an intelligent system ensures everything remains useful and makes collecting materials feel rewarding, even when I was bored of backtracking through the same environments. Eternal Strands makes a strange misstep when it comes to explaining its mechanics. There's a distinct lack of detailed information on how many of its systems work. Sure, you could check armor stats and make reasonable assumptions about their effects, like damage reduction, resistances, and so on, but some mechanics interact in unexpected ways. Take weight, for example. In most games, weight affects mobility, stamina consumption, or inventory limits. Well, that's somewhat true here. Weight also determines how much force impacts Bryn when she's pushed. Given the physics-heavy gameplay, this can be a major factor in boss fights or environmental hazards. Yet the game never explains it. I only realized its importance towards the end of my playthrough. Similarly, when unlocking new abilities, you're given a basic description of what it does, but upgrades lack any explanation. Does increasing a fire ability's level boost its damage, its range, or its duration? No idea. And for non-damaging abilities, the ambiguity is even worse. I had no clue how upgrading one of the ice-based abilities affected it, and as far as I could tell, it didn't. Most of the information of what stats and upgrades actually did was found in online forums where other players seemed to have the same confusion that I did.
Hold on.
Despite its flaws, Eternal Strands deserves recognition for its world building. The game presents a fresh take on a fantasy setting packed with intricate lore and well-developed history. While the player's journey is confined to a single region, the wealth of information about different lands, cultures, and events makes the world feel vast and immersive. Unlike many fantasy games that leave aspects of their lore vague, Eternal Strands goes the extra mile to provide explanations for nearly everything, avoiding plot holes and lazy storytelling. The voice acting is also commendable, with each character having a distinct personality and well-developed backstory.
Camp in order to connect the two. We'll make sure you have a key swatch to connect any other loom gates to this one from now on.
At the end of the day, Eternal Strands offers a unique adventure that emphasizes player creativity and physics-based interactions. When I explored a new area for the first time and encountered a new type of boss, I genuinely had a good time. Unfortunately, its repetitive gameplay and underdeveloped systems make it a tough game to get through. However, as the first title from the studio, the creativity and ambition behind it are undeniable. Despite my frustrations, I have high hopes for this studio and what it can accomplish in the future. Thank you everybody for watching. If you liked what you saw, be sure to like and subscribe and follow us on Twitch for live content. Until next time, cheers!